Welcome back. We're examining a controversial documentary which examines potential vote rigging in the US elections of past. Well, the main subject of the film, Murder, Spies and Voting Lies, is our guest today, joining us from Florida. Clint Curtis says he had to tell the world what was going on once he realized how dangerous the situation had become. Also discussing the controversy with us is the documentary's interviewer and narrator, Brad Friedman, editor of bradblog.com. So let's get back to our questions. Clint Curtis, an email that had come in from Malaysia, if I may put this to you, from Kuala Isabiazar in Terengganu in Malaysia, who says, both electronic and manual voting can be manipulated if security is lax. All the advancement cannot replace honesty, the basic principle of life. And I wonder, the US election, the system counts a lot on faith and goodwill. And I wonder, when all this information has been coming out, why is there still faith in the election system the way it is? Why do people go ahead with it and not raise some concerns?
Well, the information hasn't come out as much as we would like it to so far. So not a lot of people know. There's some knowledge, the documentaries are showing, some people are watching them, some people are not. But so the information isn't as widespread as you would think it would be. And as far as, the faith in it, the problem with the electronic machines over the paper, which, you could cheat by sliding extra, stuffing the ballot box and all that, is that the electronic machines take all the other people out of it and just put one or two people in charge of the flip. So it's very hard to get caught. It's almost impossible to ever check, and it doesn't take a big conspiracy of people. It takes one or two people to affect national elections, rather than you have to have like people in the SOE's office and people doing the counting, and the canvassing board has to be in on. So there's a lot more involved with trying to flip a election that's basically on paper than there ever is in electronics. Electronics, it's just done, it's magic, and you don't know the difference.
Now, Brad Friedman,
that takes me,
well, Brad Friedman, that takes me to that question we had from Eve in Norway, who says, if there has been this result from 2000 and 2004, this suspect result, what safeguards can be put in place for this year's election?
Well, look, the entire thing here, the entire issue, the problem is that we have taken the transparency out of the system. We need to restore the transparency. We now have about 4 or 5 private companies completely controlling our public election. They're doing so with proprietary hardware and software that the people can't see. So you've got to restore the transparency so that people can oversee our own elections. We don't have a system, we don't have a faith-based election system. Our country, our system, our democracy, our Constitution is built on checks and balances and the ability for the people to see what's going on and to assure that everything is correct. Clint is absolutely right when he talks about the fact that it now takes a single person to flip an entire election on these machines without detection, whereas with paper ballots, yes, you can still flip an election, but it takes a much larger conspiracy. It's much easier to catch these guys. So that's why we need to restore that transparency. Otherwise, we're going to have election after election after election where we have questions, and that's not good for American democracy, and frankly, that's not good for democracy anywhere in the world.
That brings me, Brad, to that second question, Brad, that we had from Juliana in Paris, who says, what responsibility should the international community have here in trying to sort something out for the U.S. when the U.S. has preached so much about democracy to other countries?
Yeah, listen, when other countries have elections, we go and monitor them. I would welcome folks from other countries coming here, monitoring what we're doing, and when they see problems, they should do exactly what I do, what America does, and these problems should be condemned. We had an election right after the 2004 election out in Ukraine, and it's discussed in Murder, Spies, and Voting Lies, where it looked like the challenger should have won, but instead the incumbent won. And the reason it looked like that is because the exit polls said that the challenger should have won. Well, as it turns out, the company that did that exit poll in the Ukraine was the same company that did them here in the U.S. And in fact, the disparity was larger here in the U.S. than in Ukraine. And yet, George Bush and Colin Powell came out and condemned that Ukraine election based on what they said was fraud suggested by these exit polls. Right. When it happened there, it was a big problem. They got a new election. When it happened here, no one wanted to talk about it, certainly not George Bush and certainly not the folks in the U.S. corporate media.
Abu Bakr is in London with a question. Go ahead, Abu Bakr.
Yes, I'm just questioning about the democracy of U.S. because we the Africans and in diaspora or in Africa, we are observing the U.S. elections. So, I mean, Africa is a democracy that is looking at U.S. and European countries to see if they are really doing things right, so we can copy them. But if we see that America can cheat, can America stand tomorrow and say that the African countries are not doing fair, and they are not, doing democracy and so on? So,
Abu Bakr, I'm going to because we touched on this subject a little bit already with Juliana's question in Paris. Let's get John on the line from London, who also has a question. Go ahead, John.
Yeah.
Go on.
Should I ask? Okay.
Yes.
What I'm asking is, on your voter system, you're already talking about the irregularities of voter rigging in America. Now, what moral standing does America have if you are doing the same thing and you are trying to advance democracy in the third world countries, which counts by voting, and yet you open your mouth so big about Zimbabwe?
Right, John. John, we've touched on this subject. Both Abu Bakr and John have both raised the same issue about how America can preach. We touched on this. So, Curtis, let me put an email to you that came in from Oman, from Salala, and Khalid Al-Haribi wrote in saying, e-voting is easier and quicker. Traditional voting comes with traditional impediments that encourage dominant groups and discourage the less fortunate. I wish the US and the rest of the world would switch to e-voting. Now, Clint, is that even feasible? I mean, has that idea ever been proposed in the USA, especially considering that there would be the risk of, obviously the secret ballot being lost because it's easy to identify how an individual votes?
Well, not only that, because you'd have to validate them, basically over the internet, but internet security is not that good. And you're still stuck with the person who wrote the internet program, them being able to tell you who won. Because unlike a lot of systems where, where you can get a receipt so you know how you voted, it doesn't help for you to know how you voted. You need to put all those receipts together to know how everyone voted. That's how you determine who wins. So essentially, you want to get the machines out of it. Paper may be harder, it may be bulky, it may be hard to deal with, but it's something that you can verify, it's something you can count again, and it's something that is manually filled out. It also allows the ability, the machine. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Brad.
Well, no, I was going to say, if you think we have problems with the electronic voting systems we have now, oh man, just go to internet voting where there's less transparency, less security, and it's even easier to game an election. Look, we're looking for we're creating a solution for a problem that really doesn't exist. You take a piece of paper, you mark your selections, you put it in a box, and you count it, and you let everybody watch the counting. It's not really a problem. We're creating this problem, and we're making things worse. And those callers from around the world who are, talking about what's going on in America, that's why this is a problem. And please don't confuse the current administration with the people of America, because I believe the people understand this, they're concerned about it, and we realize we're setting an example for the entire world, and so we need to get our act together here and restore transparency and confidence in our election system so we can be the example for the rest of the world.
Less than a minute to go. I want to squeeze in a call from Fiji. Great to hear from Fiji. Nolene, what would you like to ask?
I'd just like to ask, basically, with so much campaign funding, that the Democratic campaign has, there seems to be such a lot of mainstream support, and so many resources. I'm just wondering why I haven't heard about this vote rigging at all in any of the presidential...
Clint, could you take that just quickly? We've got about 20 seconds to go. I'm sorry.
Well, yeah, the candidates are playing politics. They want to get out their people, and unfortunately the Democrats are in unbelievable denial about the problem with electronic voting. And so hopefully folks can go to votinglies.com and get more on this documentary.
All right. Thank you very much, Brad and Clint. Thank you very much for both joining us for this conversation. Thanks.
Thanks for having us, Riz.
Pleasure. And tomorrow's show, we get an international perspective on the election through the eyes of journalists outside the US. And later this week, as part of our continuing coverage, we bring you two specials, listening to the hopes of young American voters. First, a panel of politically diverse youth, followed by a group of young African American voters talking economy, education, and how much race really matters this time. From me and the team, we'll see you next time.